Download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere.
Hello everyone and welcome back into the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. Before we get into our fourth segment of the day here, I do want to address a comment we got before the break from Splash Bro about the Bears. The Bears season not quite on the line, but definitely teetering with a loss. Yeah, they are a very bizarre team. I don't know quite what to make of them at this point, as well as certain pundits around the sports world, but I do know that they're either going to be one of those surprising teams where everything starts to click for them. Caleb starts to play much like he did in that 3-week stretch before their bye when they headed to London, and in London rather. But I do feel like this also has a chance to go off the rails. They still have not played many divisional games, and that division is going to be very tough and physical to match up against. So you're going to have to be prepared for those games, starting with this game this week against the Packers. So I think you're correct in your sentiment here about how the Bears should be wary of how their season could either improve or kind of falter in these coming weeks, because they're definitely a team that a lot of people feel just right about, but also extremely disappointed about, because there were some lofty expectations for this team. But let's get into our fourth segment of the day here. Thank you for your comments, Splash Bros, about college football games with huge implications. We definitely know about the CFP implications, but let's talk about some fantasy implications. I feel like this is the week, right, where all these top 4 or 5 teams are in bizarre matchups, and they're also on the road, which is unheard of this late in the season for a lot of these top 5 teams. But I'm not necessarily looking at those games. What I'm looking at are games that kind of fit that mold, but also I know have some sort of meaning to them. I feel like in terms of picking games, I can only pick 3 really that I saw from a real life scale and a fantasy scale that kind of matched what I was thinking about. One, obviously, perhaps the game of the week. Another, a kind of get-right game that could potentially be a pratfall. And another in the ACC that's not necessarily as meaningful now as it could have been, but still a very exciting one, because the team who wins could potentially sneak into the back door of the ACC championship game. So, without further ado, let's talk about the college games with huge implications this week. Starting off with, of course, perhaps the biggest game of the week in college football, no matter what perspective you look at it from. Tennessee, Georgia. This is the CFP elimination game to end all CFP elimination games, and ultimately will determine the general outlook of the SEC. Either Tennessee secures the upset win in Athens, immediately becomes the team to beat in the SEC, practically penciling their name into the SEC championship game, or Georgia escapes with a win, and they immediately become one of the more appealing 2-loss teams in the SEC, with wins over 1-loss SEC team Texas, and now 2-loss SEC team Tennessee. And so this game's importance is truly tantamount to both of these teams. However, the interesting thing is, from a fantasy perspective, there's not necessarily much talent to glean from. I feel like, hearing news about Trevor Etienne being out is a huge detriment to Georgia, because I look at this Georgia roster and I don't necessarily think they can sustain success on the offensive side of the football without, Etienne. He's a big part of what they do, and if they lose him for this game, which they have, Carson Beck is going to have even more weight on his shoulders. And what we've seen of him these past couple of weeks goes to show that he shouldn't, because he's come up short in some games. Yes, he had that win over Texas despite his 3 picks in that game. But more often than not, if you throw picks, teams are going to take advantage of them. And that's what this game is going to come down to. Field position. Both of these teams like to generate field position through their defenses because they know their offenses are the weaker of the two units. Tennessee's defense does it in a better fashion. They are the best defense, I believe, in the SEC and the country. And so this matchup is not boding well for Carson Beck, especially with the loss of ETN, because Noah Frazier, as much as I love him, he's not a back who's primed for games of this magnitude. And who's going to step up for them in the receiver room? Is it going to be Dominic Lovett? Is it going to be Dylan Bell? Is it going to be Cash Jones? Who is going to step up for this group in the receiving game? Whereas on the Tennessee side of the football, there really isn't much on the offensive side that gives me hope outside of Dylan Sampson, an all-world running back for them, who's averaging over like 5.5 yards per carry, I believe. I feel like, this game from a fantasy perspective could get a little bit crazy because we could see a hero break out for either of these teams. But for the most part, this game is going to be decided by who has shorter fields on offense, because that's where the defenses come into play. Because they're going to dominate this game, and it's not really going to matter who scores the football. It's going to matter when they score and how they score. Because I don't feel either offense is equipped to put up 30 to 35 points in this game. This is going to be a defensive slugfest. And so, as much as I want to say Dylan Bell is going to have a breakout game, Nico is going to throw for over 300 yards. It's not going to happen. Both of these teams are banged up. Even Nico himself is banged up for this one, but should be ready to go, hopefully. Trevor Etienne ruled out. So now we know that both of these teams are going to try and slug it out and see what comes of it. And so this could be a game where I can say I was completely wrong and some fantasy stars emerge. And you might want to follow their careers into the NFL. But for the most part, this game will come down to how short these offenses' fields are. Because that's the quickest way to score. Because there's no way that you're going to drive down the field on either of these defenses. And that should not bode well for two of the SEC's most perplexing offenses. That's the word I was trying to find. Now let's go into the weird game of the week here that I just tried to choose. LSU going into the swamp in Gainesville to take on a Florida team that's really down and out. And I know what you're thinking, how the hell can Florida keep up with a team that in LSU, got demolished by Alabama at home, but still should manage to win this game by a margin that is very lofty. I feel like, the reason why I chose this game, because out of all of them, I feel like LSU, outside of the top 25 landscape, is the team that I feel let their season go by, but still has so much talent. And I can't quite pin my finger on, why they've lost in such a bizarre fashion. Some teams that I think they should have beaten. Remember, at the start of the season, they lost to USC when USC had a last-minute drive on them. So I kind of feel like in games of this nature for LSU, this could be a get-right game, right? Because I have faith that this team is good and a solid top 25 team that just, for some reason can't quite put it together for an entire season. But when I look at Florida, right, as down and out as they are, they're on a third-string quarterback who can't even surpass 30 passing yards. I feel like, I want to see to what level can this LSU team eliminate certain things. I want to see them come out guns blazing. Because if this LSU team comes out a little bit stagnant on both sides of the football, that shows me that perhaps we should have seen this coming all along for LSU. Because LSU was one of those sneaky teams that everyone was saying could have a chance to disrupt the outcome of the SEC, could have a chance to crash the CFP even. But I really want to see if against an inferior team that they should beat by 50 points at the very least. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but a lot of points. If they can actually do it and have a complete performance from the first to fourth quarter. Because if they don't, then maybe, that's where seeds of doubt sort of seep in and saying, oh, maybe those 3 losses actually mean something. Because at this point in the season, I feel like we look outside of the top teams in the SEC and we're trying to decipher who's for real, who could potentially deserve a spot in the playoff, and which 3 lost teams, kind of let their season get away. LSU is going to come under the microscope a lot. And so this game against Florida may just be a cupcake game for them. But I want to see it be a complete one, if that makes sense. And from a fantasy perspective, all of these players are highly capable of giving you good performances. Garrett Nussmeier, I still have faith in. Kyron Lacey, Anderson. On the Florida side of things, well, their running backs at the very least could potentially do some harm to this LSU defense. But what I'm looking for is a resounding victory for them. The last game I want to kind of touch on, I kind of went over time yet again, but I do want to touch on this game, Clemson-Pitt. Clemson-Pitt is an interesting game in that now it means a little bit less in the ACC picture, but both of these teams I still really love. I love Clemson a lot. I love Cade Klubnik and how he's proven people wrong in terms of evolving as a QB. I love Phil Maffa, perhaps the most underrated running back in the country. And the Pitt side of things, I just love their efficiency, right? It's kind of gotten away from them over the past couple of weeks, and that's the reason they're out of the ACC race. But I do love this team quite a lot because of how they can hurt teams. I like Desmond Reed. I like Eli Holstein. I like that combination of solidity that they have in the backfield. And thus, I'm looking for this to be a very tight, tense game, despite it not necessarily meaning much to either of these teams. Because this is kind of one of those fighting for pride moments where either one of these teams could have potentially gone to the CFP, competed in the ACC championship game, and won it. But this is where they stand, and they still want to beat the crap out of each other. That's how I view it. So that should be a good one. But let me know what you think in the comments, because for our last segment, we are going to go back to the NFL and talk about Sunday Night Football a little bit more extensively, namely some fantasy advice on who to start and who to sit. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.